Sacramento in the early 90s was a city in transition, its streets absorbing Los Angeles gang culture like a sponge. Blue and red flags began to carve invisible borders, and neighborhoods that once carried nothing more than family names were now split into deadly sets. At the heart of it all was Meadowview, a working-class community in South Sacramento. For years, Meadowview was a neighborhood of families, of mothers raising kids on porches, of block parties and church gatherings. But by 1992, the shadow of the gang war had settled in, and one young man named Anna Ray Brown, better known as X-Rated, wanted to change the map. X-Rated was just 17 years old, but he carried himself with the paranoia and arrogance of someone convinced he was destined for notoriety. He wasn't content being another soldier. He wanted to be a general, the voice of the Crips. He believed he could flip the whole neighborhood blue, make it his kingdom. But in his head there was always a whisper of doubt. He felt small, underestimated, and that insecurity twisted into aggression. He thought violence would give him power. Music would give him a platform, and together he could carve his legend in blood. One night in March of 1992, he and his crew set their sights on rivals from the Meadowview Bloods. The plan was simple and savage: storm the house, catch them off guard, and make an example. Armed and masked, they crept toward the small home where two Bloods were believed to be. But X-Rated wasn't hunting warriors in the street. He was dragging the war into a family's living room. Inside that home was Patricia Harris, a 52-year-old mother and grandmother who had dedicated her life to keeping the neighborhood together. She was the kind of woman who fed kids who weren't hers, who lobbied city council for safety and opportunity, who believed Meadowview could still be more than gangland. On that night, her home was supposed to be a sanctuary. Instead, it became the stage for a tragedy. The door shattered under the force of boots. Screams erupted in the dark. Children ducked for cover. Patricia tried to shield her family. In the chaos, a gun went off. The shot tore through her body, dropping her instantly. The house that had always been her safe place became the place where her blood stained the floorboards. In that single moment, the psychology of a neighborhood changed forever. The killing of Patricia Harris wasn't like other murders. She wasn't a banger. She wasn't on the corner throwing signs. She was a mother, a community activist, the kind of figure Meadowview needed most. Her death struck a nerve deeper than any gang hit. To the Bloods, it was the ultimate violation, proof that the Crips would prey on the innocent. To the community, it was sacrilege, a sign that the Crips had no code. And from that night forward, Patricia Harris became a martyr. X-Rated thought the murder would cement his legend. He went into the studio and posed on the cover of his debut album, Psychoactive, holding the very gun police said was used in the crime. He filled the record with violent imagery, painting himself as the psycho, untouchable and unrepentant. But instead of building fear, he built disgust. The streets looked at him not as a soldier, but as a coward. A kid too scared to fight men in the street, hiding behind masks and killing a mother in her own home. The Bloods seized the narrative. They began calling Meadowview theirs, riding in Patricia Harris's name. Youngsters who might have stayed neutral started flying red, saying they were doing it to honor the woman who had fed them, clothed them, looked out for them. Janrick Avenue became known as CK Avenue, Crip Killer Avenue. For the next generation, banging red wasn't just about territory. It was revenge. To be from Meadowview Bloods, to be from 665, meant you had to prove yourself by sliding on Crips. The neighborhood flipped almost overnight, and the Crip reputation in South Sacramento never recovered. Meanwhile, X-Rated sat in a courtroom, his own music used against him. Prosecutors pointed at the album cover, the lyrics, the image he had created of himself as a psycho. In 1996, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 31 years to life. He thought prison would be another stage for his legend. Instead, it was a tomb. He tried to keep his career alive, recording over phone lines, smuggling DAT recorders, releasing albums from behind bars. But inside the walls, paranoia only grew sharper. He was stabbed in riots, accused of snitching, forced to survive in the constant tension of prison politics. Every knock on his cell felt like a death sentence. Back in Meadowview, the Bloods tightened their grip. Crips became a memory, a warning. Mothers told their kids, Don't be blue. Don't end up like them. Patricia Harris's name was still spoken at block gatherings in hushed tones, a reminder of the night innocence was stolen and vengeance was born. By the 2000s, Meadowview was dominated by Bloods and Pirates. The Crips were ghosts. The murder that was supposed to elevate X-Rated had buried his set instead. He walked out of Mule Creek Prison in 2018, grey around the edges, speaking of redemption and change. But in the eyes of the streets, his legacy was already sealed. He wasn't the king who built an empire. He was the paranoid kid whose ego killed a mother and cursed his own colours. And that is the true horror of Meadowview's story. The scariest part isn't the murder itself. It's how one man's desperation to prove himself rewrote the identity of an entire neighbourhood. Patricia Harris's blood became the ink that redrew Sacramento's gang map. And even today, when people speak of Meadowview, they remember the line that was crossed, the mother who was taken, and the set that never recovered. Because one paranoid mind, trying to be a legend, created a nightmare that still lingers in the streets.